Hello. This video is a brief overview to help you as a student relating to the influences on Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence. Now, to me, this is one of the most important documents in American history. It is a summation of some of the greatest political theorists, and it was used to justify a number of revolutions as well as independence movements around the world. You think of the French Revolution. It helped inspire that. It helped inspire Ho Chi Minh at the end of World War II. Yes, he wrote a Vietnamese Declaration of Independence because he was tired of the foreign occupations. And then obviously he got angry at us for backing the French when they came back in following World War II. It also inspired those at Tiananmen Square in Communist China in 1989. Needless to say, it's a very quick document, about 10 minutes to read, which I won't be doing, thank you. We're just going to look at the basics, though. Let's take a look. What ideas did Jefferson borrow and take from Locke and Rousseau? John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Locke wrote in the 1680s and 1690s, following the Glorious Revolution, which established a constitutional monarchy, which meant Parliament had a certain amount of power, checks and balances on the king. And then Rousseau, who wrote in the 1760s during a time of absolutism in Paris, in Versailles, under Louis XV and then eventually Louis XVI. And how did they view the purposes of government, what the role of government was, and the sources of power for government? So we're going to go through this. Let's start with Locke, which John Locke was a contemporary of Isaac Newton. Took the idea of natural law to a new level, as opposed to the ideas of Hobbes, who was written about almost 40 years before Locke. Hobbes had written Leviathan and said it is the duty of the state to protect its citizens, and that citizens should give up their freedoms for these protections. Dark, dank time. Understandable that it was the end of a civil war with Hobbes. Locke was not in that situation. Locke was at a time where we were at the height of the Enlightenment, that science and rational thinking really came about, and that he took the idea of Isaac Newton's ideas of tabula rasa. All men were born with a blank slate. We were free and equal, and we were given unalienable rights of life, liberty, and property that could not be interfered with by the governments. And if the governments do this and interfere or tinker with your rights, you may change the forms of governments if it's abused, which they did in 1688. For about 3 years, James II had slowly become much more of a tyrant. Parliament got tired of it, called upon his daughter from a previous marriage. See, James had been a practicing Anglican and then converted to Catholicism, and had married a woman with French ties. And they had a young boy who was born a Roman Catholic, which meant the Anglican Church, freedoms of religion would be pushed aside. Well, Parliament called his daughter Mary and her husband William of Orange. They came across. No bloodshed was ever going to occur during this revolution. And following it, Locke wrote the English Bill of Rights. And then he also wrote the second treatise on civil government, which basically lays out these same ideas. Rousseau, on the other hand, all power was in the people. Power is derived from the people. The social contract, and he actually wrote the book, The Social Contract, which Hobbes and Locke had believed in. They believed in two different versions of it. He went as far to say this is exactly what is happening, that rights are to be protected, that we are born free and happy, that there's a general will to be protected of the people, and that if the state abuses the power of those people with the rights, it is the duty of those people to create new governments, which leads us to the Declaration, not signed on July 4th, but agreed upon. And it's 3 parts. There's a preamble, two paragraphs long, that explain everything that we need to know. And it's pretty much Hobbes and Locke and Rousseau all in one. Although Hobbes really doesn't show up as much. Just a matter of that you're going to take control of your government. Grievances against the crown, the second part. There's 27 of them. We will skip through most of those, but there'll be a few I'll talk about. And then the separation statement, basically saying that the king was a tyrant and we're out of here. Let's look at the preamble. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. In other words, we're going to explain why are we writing this document, almost like a mission statement, and that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Wow. Endowed with rights that cannot be taken away. Very John Locke. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as they seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness. Rousseau. And they go through a lot of things about the king and, things that it's our duty. And then we get to the grievances, and these are about 27 in total. Most of them deal with the things the king and the prime minister have done and how parliament didn't do a thing to help them. I think the most important things, and as you look at these three: violations of the right of representation, maintenance of a standing army, not under civilian control, but under royal control, and the loss of the independent court. And it's basically them saying, these are the things you've done to maintain your absolute tyranny. Now, keep in mind, George III, like many European kings, believed he was divinely granted power to rule. The divine right of kings. This document is a slap in the face and a direct challenge to the divine right of kings if they do not follow natural law. So I'm giving you some. He's made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and how they're paid. He's erected new offices, sent in new officers to harass people, kept amongst us in times of peace, standing armies without consent of our legislatures, which you've got to really put it in perspective, that up until 1763, the American colonists, let's call them that, of Great Britain, had been allowed to create their own institutions and understood that they were part of a bigger picture, but they wanted that constitutional monarchy enforced. But they also had created their own ways of trial by jury. They've tried all sorts of different law systems that were unique to them and created for special situations. And this one size fits all, that all of a sudden, after 1775, that you are in rebellion according to the king, doesn't work. For quartering large bodies of armed troops amongst us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. In other words, Boston Massacre. For cutting off trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes without consent, depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, or if worst case, sending you overseas away from your peers. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war, plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed our lives of our people. And then he did one thing that he should never have done. Started ordering German troops in to help out in the war. The Hessians. So he did create a tyranny. That's what they're accusing him of. It reads like an indictment. And then the statement of separation. And probably the most powerful statement is, a prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Violations of natural law. That if the government is destructive of the rights of the people can abolish that government. And then they basically say, we are out of here. This is what we intend to do. That we are truly free and independent states with the full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances. That's important because they'll need to get the French in there to help them out later on. Establish commerce and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. So when you look at this, what rights did Jefferson take from Locke and Rousseau? Did he take the best of both worlds and make them work, or did he just separate them and just add it all together? And the best question is, how would you summarize these views of all three men on the purposes of government and the sources of governmental power? Guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate you showing up. And we will see you again next time.